Hello everybody and welcome to Nathan on Shuffle and to my latest episode of New Album Spotlight, the show where I put the spotlight on a new album in progressive rock or related genres that I want to recommend to you guys if you have similar taste to music as me, albums that I've been enjoying and just can't help but share to the world my excitement for. So this one is a big release that I'm sure people watching this episode have all heard about. Probably have heard the album themselves, probably have read and seen a lot of different reviews already, I'm assuming. So I'm putting my hat in the ring and talking about the latest Opeth album, The Last Will and Testament, which is a really exciting new album, which is more in the prog metal vein, maybe even prog death metal vein, but still has a lot of things to love from someone who's just more into pure prog than into the metal scene as I am. So I'm coming at it from that perspective, which hopefully gives me kind of a unique angle that I'm not really the death metal fan. I'm more of just a traditional progressive rock fan, but I'm always trying to go outside of my comfort zone slightly to find little hidden gems, things that perk my ears or open a new genre to my mind. So Opeth has been one of those bands that has really expanded my understanding of prog in the modern era and has really been quite a journey as I've gone through listening to their discography and trying to understand them and trying to become a fan after hearing other people's enthusiasm for the band. So since there's so many other reviews out there, since so many people have detailed their opinions and talked through the album, and many of you have already heard it, I'm assuming, I thought what would be more interesting in this video than doing a track-by-track summary of all the different things on the album and talking about this guitar solo and this, Mellotron moment and this kind of thing. I thought what would be cooler would be to talk about my experience with the band and how I've come into them and how this new album fits into my worldview of Opeth and how they've come into my life. And so that's how I'm going to approach this. I came into Opeth back probably early 2000s, I would say, somewhere around, 2005, 2006, somewhere in that era. Maybe I had heard of them before that even, but I had always shied away from them because of the death metal growls, of course. That's the big talking point with Opeth, especially among prog fans, is trying to get into them but not being a fan of the growling vocals that come with death metal. And it's been a struggle for me because I'm just not into that harsh sound. I'm not into the over-aggressiveness that it brings into the soundscape. It's just not really a vibe that fits with my personality and my persona. I don't really understand the heavy darkness and broodiness. So the harshness of it just doesn't fit with my love of like melodic prog and classic materials, that 70s kind of melodic prog sound. So I've always struggled with them, even as I got into kind of some darker, deeper progressive metal cuts. I really loved Dream Theater. They were my entry point into progressive metal, and it led me down to some other avenues. I loved Symphony X. I loved Pain of Salvation. These were kind of the progressive metal bands in the early 2000s that I was gravitating towards, and it was opening my eyes up to a little bit of a darker soundscape, perhaps, in my musical fandom. So I'd heard a lot of great things about Opeth, that they were one of the premier progressive metal bands. At this time, they were doing some of the most acclaimed albums, the Deliverance Damnation duo, Ghost Reveries. All of that was happening around this time that I was discovering progressive metal and heavier music. And I tried to listen to those albums and always struggled with those growling vocals, with the heaviness and the darkness, but there was so much musically that I latched onto that I absolutely loved. And it was always this hard thing of like, I know I could love this band if I could just get over the hump of like really being turned off by these harsh vocals. That's been my journey with them. I listened to Damnation, which is their one album from this period that is all lighter, is all clean vocals perhaps. And I loved that. And it really gave me something to really enjoy from the band without having to deal with my conflicted feelings about the harsh vocals. But at the same time, it didn't have a lot of the musicality of the other albums that I actually craved. I like some of the heavier instrumentation and some of their cool riffs and cool proggy moments and repeating musical structures that are present on other albums, but struggled with it because of my feelings about the harsh vocals, of course. What really changed my opinion, what really solidified everything in my head, was Watershed, which came out in 2008. I picked up the album. It was kind of like my final stand with Opeth. Okay, is this the time where I'm really going to get into them? I'm really going to give this album a good try and a great chance. And for me, they really blended their vocal styles perfectly on that album. It wasn't too overly harsh. There were some growling, some harsh vocals, but they were used somewhat sparingly compared to their past. And that really helped ease me into what they were doing with it, and allowed me to open my mind up to some of their older albums as well, to Still Life, to Blackwater Park. I started to see the genius and started to be able to understand and appreciate the harsh vocals. And I think out of all of the death metal prog bands that I've heard, they do the growling vocals the best from my experience. And I haven't dabbled a ton in different growling vocals, but they're the ones that are the least off-putting. I think Michael Ackerfeld really does a great job of utilizing that, but not overdoing it, to do it in such a manner that it's palatable, that you can understand what he's trying to convey and go for, and it fits better into the music from my experience, at least. And one of the greatest things about Opeth is the way that they balance light and shade, that they're able to have these really dark, heavy, brooding passages, but then have these cool acoustic, folky moments that really brighten it up and give you a different sound. And it's these two different things that are able to meld together that provides the core to me of what's great about them. And then after Watershed, interestingly enough, they transitioned to more of kind of a proggier sound, and away from their harsher vocals and away from that death metal style. Heritage was their album, and you'd think this would be like a revelation to me as a fan of theirs, but not a fan of the death metal. But Heritage, I kind of struggled with it, kind of went away from their core sound a bit too much from my experience. I was just getting into their style and sound, and they did something that was a wild departure. But I've grown to appreciate what they were going for on that one. I really loved Pale Communion. I think that was one of their best post-Watershed albums that showcased their ability to really utilize these prog rock styles in a satisfying way and not sacrificing, the core of their band and what they're all about. Sorceress and In Convenenum were a bit hit or miss for me. I like a lot of different tracks from those, but as a whole, they didn't really impress me much, and I haven't gone back to them a ton. So that's kind of been my journey leading up to this point. And so now we get The Last Will and Testament, which to me really stands out from all of these post-Watershed albums, the new Peth, as it were, and harkens back to their classic death metal style, but not in an overwhelming way, not in a way that feels like they're abandoning all the things they learned from these proggier albums that they've put out recently. It's a combination of these two factors. It's a combination of their heavier approach, of those death metal vocals, of this brooding darkness and heaviness that matches the subject matter, but utilizing that with a proggy structure, with proggy instrumentals that are more exploratory, more jazzier, more expansive, more experimental, and they're able to blend these two worlds really fascinatingly well. And it just makes for a really satisfying listen for me, and has made this one of the most enjoyable Opeth albums that I've come across in my storied history with the band. And I'm in the early days of listening to this record, I'll admit, because I didn't get any kind of advanced promo copy or early release. I listened to the album when it dropped on its release date this last Friday, so I've only heard it a few times, but it's really spoken to me. I really love what they're going for with this album. It's a concept record with a really intriguing premise about this like Succession style old patriarch, the family kind of gathering and hearing the Last Will and Testament read, and sort of the reactions to this and some of the twists and turns this takes are really fascinating. Family secrets being revealed, some darker history being explored, and I think it's all showcased really well with the music that's on board here. And that's why I think that Michael Ackerfeld was able to bring back these harsh growling vocals, because it fits the themes, it fits the music, it fits what he's going for as being this kind of darker patriarch of this family, kind of expressing these family secrets and this darkness and some of these harsher realities that this family is facing in this moment. So I think it's a really cool reintroduction, and it's not overblown, it's not overdone, in my opinion at least. Some people who really hate harsh vocals are probably going to be completely turned away, but I think it's done really tastefully. I think it fits the music and the mood that they're going for, and it's balanced, of course, with typical clean vocals. And in fact, Michael Ackerfeld is kind of going for some different vocal stylings as well, sometimes almost operatic or, more expansive, some deeper tones to the vocals. He's really kind of exploring different sounds and ranges. And I think that's what this album is just a real big experiment. And I really respect and appreciate Michael Ackerfeld for being experimental and willing to just go for it and not worry about like, oh, well, the death metal fans hate this, well, the prog people hate this. He's just embracing it all. This is all facets and style of what he loves in music, and he's bringing it into this crazy kaleidoscopic maelstrom of music that he's put together. One of the complaints perhaps for me is, as someone who's just trying to get into the album, is how it's divided into these sections and there isn't track titles. It's just section 1, section 2, section 3. And it makes it hard for me to remember what's in what section, to divide out the album in a way that kind of fits in my brain. When I listen to an album and I try to kind of catalog it, I try to make sense of it and divide it up into sections and parts and things. And I feel like for me, this album is just one long piece that's hard to break into different parts. Of course it's broken into sections by the track list, but since they don't have names, it's just hard to really quantify what section goes with what. It's just numerical, and for some reason my brain has really found it hard to catalog this album and to remember certain specific moments and where they went within the album's framework. But in some ways that's almost more exciting because it allows me to explore this album deeper and deeper, to uncover the hidden layers and to make it kind of a new, fresh experience every time I put the album on. So it's a really fascinating record. I just can't deny that there's so many cool things here. A lot of heavier moments, some really cool bass lines, some jazzy keys all over the place, vintage sounds like their classic prog period. There's some flute playing from Ian Anderson and some of his spoken vocals as well, that really add a lot of cool texture to the album and add a different style. There's some really quirky, off-kilter, proggy stuff that they go into. Some really interesting Middle Eastern sounding sections, especially in section 5, that add a different flavor and different style. There's plenty of heavy riffage, heavy like driving, rocking sections, some killer keyboard soloing. There's some really cool atmosphere and organ and darker tones. There's just so much to get into and so many different things throughout the record that leads to this overwhelming feeling that this is something new and fresh. This is the start of a new period. It's not old Peth. It's not new Peth. It's a different thing that they haven't done yet. And it's starting this new phase in their career, hopefully, where they combine these elements into something new and exciting and fresh. And that's what I love my progressive music to do, is to do something new and different, to not just be a rehash of Blackwater Park or rehash of Ghost Reveries. We love those albums. They're great and did some great things. But let's find out what happens when we take some of the qualities of that, blend it with some of the new things they've been doing, and put it into this interesting concept album that adds even new spices to the mix. That's more interesting to me, and that's what we have on display. And it all ends with a really interesting closing track called A Story Never Told, which is this really expansive ballad with this long extended David Gilmour style guitar solo at the end, some beautiful piano playing through here, Michael's clean vocals, no growling to be heard, no harshness, no heavy metal, and it's an interesting coda to the album. It feels like the album officially ends with section 7, but this is kind of like the epilogue, if you will, the kind of closing statement, and I'm glad it's included here because it's a beautiful song that's a great way to close the album and bring a different facet to their sound after what's been a very heavy, dark affair. So all in all, a fantastic record that I've fallen in love with even over just a few listens, and excited to delve deeper, especially when I get my physical copy, hopefully arriving today in the mail when I'm filming this. So exciting all around. I think this is going to be a factor in my year-end list even. And I recommend it to all prog fans. I think it provides something new that's fascinating and different from what you've come to expect from them. If you've dismissed them because of the death metal side to their sound, maybe give it a try. I know it still has the death metal sound and vocals, but I think it's done in a proggy way rather than in a metal way, if that makes any sort of sense. Sure, it's heavy. Sure, there's some harshness that's hard to the ears if you're not into that style. But I think it fits the themes of the songs. If you check out the lyrics, if you check out the storyline and delve into that and how that harsh growling kind of fits into the mood and into the character of this music, I think it'll open up your mind perhaps and lead you into the album. But if it's not for you, it's not for you. And I understand that, because there's a lot of bands where I've just had to say, this isn't for me, I'm stepping away. I wish I loved this, but I just can't. That's a totally understandable reaction as well. But for this band in particular, it's been one that I've had this journey with, where I've been able to get into them and understand where they're coming from with their harsh sounds. And they're able to do it tastefully. It's not overblown or overdone. I think they do it in a manner that works and that makes sense. So that's what I have for you guys today. Hopefully you appreciated the review, and I hope you appreciate my thoughts on Opeth in general. Let me know in the comments how you feel about Opeth. If you've had a similar journey as me, I'd love to hear it. And give me your thoughts and impressions about The Last Will and Testament. If you're as blown away as I am, or maybe more lukewarm, or maybe have your quibbles with it, let me know in the comments. I'd be interested to hear that. So thank you guys so much, and I'll hopefully catch you guys in a future episode. Bye, everybody.